Well, good afternoon, freaks. It's your boy Marty here, sitting down with Matt. It's a Monday afternoon, October 22nd, 2018, the year of our Lord. This is the Rabbit Hole Recap. No sponsors this week. Blew through our ad spend in October, re-upping right now. But shout out to our sponsors of previous episodes. The Bitcoin price right now on Bitstamp is $6,391. We've had a big week of news, Matt. First, before we get into the news, an intro. What's going on? How we doing today?
Hey guys, it's Matt here. Happy to be here. I feel like ever since we started announcing the Bitcoin price, it has been 6,400 ish.
Yeah, it's really tight.
Ever since that one listener was like, you guys should say it every episode. It just refuses to move.
Bitcoin is our stable coin.
There you go.
It's been very stable recently.
I'm happy with that.
And it's actually a good segue into our first story about a woman in Kenya.
Betty.
We're going to talk about Betty's place.
Betty was my hero today.
This was reported on the BBC.
It's a really shitty article, actually.
Today, actually. A very bad article, but a very, very inspiring anecdote. Betty is the owner of a restaurant, a butchery, and a pub in Kenya, and she also teaches people how to use Bitcoin. She accepts Bitcoin as payment, and she sees herself as a true cryptocurrency evangelist on the ground, trying to teach people and accept cryptocurrency and live the sovereign individual ethos. So we just want to give a shout out to Betty. Matt has a few things to say about her particularly. He's really jacked up about Betty.
I'm super excited. I'm like standing here like, Marty, you going to stop talking so I can... Betty is everything I love about Bitcoin.
There we go.
You know, she used Bitcoin profits to buy this old hotel, open up her own place. And not only does she accept Bitcoin, but she educates people about Bitcoin. It's like what we do here. You know, once a week, she's educating people in Kenya about Bitcoin. And, you know, that's what's crazy about it. The crazy thing about Bitcoin is that people just around the world, once you dive down the rabbit hole, you just want to get everyone else involved.
Next man up, in this case, next woman up. Betty just steps to the plate and says, "Hey, I'm gonna be the one to step up and start educating people." Living a true Bitcoin carnivore lifestyle, it seems like. Apparently, she has some very good lamb at her restaurant.
Yeah, I know. Michael Goldstein was the one who actually pointed out the article, and he was particularly excited about her carnivory ways as well. And he's trying to get her on his pod. If he can get her on the Noted podcast, that'd be fucking epic.
Yeah, so if anybody out there knows Betty, if we have any Kenyan listeners that
Let's get her on Noted.
Frequented Betty's place, definitely hook her up with Michael Goldstein, at Bitstein on Twitter. He's looking to interview her, and I think it would be a good one from Bitcoin carnivore to Bitcoin carnivore. So shout out to Betty, and let's use Betty as an example. You too can help teach people how to use Bitcoin. It's pretty easy. It's just taking some time to do it. So shout out Betty.
Today we're all Betty.
We are all Betty. Staying in developing economies, Venezuela. Some positive news this week. There's been a lot of confusion with Bitcoin volume in Venezuela in particular because it's very hard to gauge, because if you are denominating it in Venezuelan bolivars, it's obviously a misleading indicator because the bolivar is hyperinflating as we speak. So somebody has taken it under their arms and taken the bull by the horns and basically calculated the amount of Bitcoin volume based in US dollars on local Bitcoins in Venezuela. And it looks like since the beginning of last year, January 2017, the overwhelming trend is up and to the right, that Venezuelans are buying more and more Bitcoin every month when denominated in US dollar terms. So that's just it's just a stat we've been talking about Venezuela a lot the last 10 weeks. And I think this was a good update on what's going on there.
Yeah, it's sitting at all-time highs right now. It's about 25 million weekly volume on local Bitcoins.
Mm-hmm.
Local Bitcoins lets you trade person to person, so it's probably our best volume indicator for any given country, because you can't inflate the volumes the way you can, through a regular, like a digital exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So people like us like to look at local Bitcoin volumes to see trends. And with Venezuela, it's a clear trend up. It's sitting at all-time highs right now.
Yeah, and it's been pretty consistently growing. And
yeah, because that chart starts in January 2017, but if you go past there, it was trending up before. Like January 2017 was like the previous all-time high at that time.
Yeah.
So, you know, people say Venezuelans aren't using Bitcoin. You know, obviously not all Venezuelans are using Bitcoin, you know, but a large amount are, and it continues to grow.
Yeah. So that's keeping you updated in Venezuela. Actually, anecdote from my better half. She works actually with a couple of Venezuelans, and they one in particular seems to think or is saying that Dash is used a lot in Venezuela.
They have, so Dash has a like a treasury system that holders can use those funds to spend on. Part of the block reward is used towards treasury endeavors. And one of the things they recently did was they have some kind of phone partnership down there where it's the phone is subsidized and seeded with the Dash wallet. So the phone is cheaper. It has a Dash wallet on it, and it already has, I think, some Dash on it. So they're like trying to spend their way into relevance down there. That's basically their strategy with everything. Dash is known as a marketing first chain. You know, they famously had like Delta ads. Like people were going to conferences and on their TV was like a Dash ad.
Yeah, so Dash, they're trying to growth hack all over the world. But
the interesting thing about Venezuela is, you know how many Bettys are in Venezuela doing exactly what she's doing, you know, spreading
numerous.
the word.
Yeah. And no, it's great. I actually had I forget whether it was about a podcast or a newsletter. Venezuelan transplanted in Canada was thanking us, I believe for bringing up Venezuela, and he was a Bitcoin advocate as well. So they're out there. So staying in the emerging economy. Actually, I don't even know if India would be considered an emerging economy at this point.
It's emerged.
It's emerged. But staying in the nation state sort of vibe, India in particular has been very harsh towards Bitcoin and cryptocurrency businesses, famously shutting down exchanges over the summer, making it really hard for people to start businesses. But it seems like a stalwart in the industry, in India in particular, Unocoin, is finding a way around these sanctions from their government. I think you can speak more to this than I can right now.
So actually, I mean, it's been kind of confusing coming out of India, and with a lot of these countries that go after Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, the reason, the biggest negative they have on the industry locally is that there's so much confusion that no one knows what the fuck's going on. But my understanding is that in India, famously, you know, they're trying to wrestle control of their population who spends tons of money outside of government purview. So they recently banned cash, like the large bills. They were going after cash even, right?
Yeah, it was about this time last year, I believe.
Yeah, so they made people cash in their large bills and basically do KYC to get the new bills. So it shouldn't be a surprise that they would go after Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Like that is the natural, you know, if they're trying to stop people from having private transactions or having transactions outside of their control, then of course they're going to go for cryptocurrency. Now, their current ban is actually on the banks and the payment providers. So it's like what the U.S. did to sports books, which is they just made it so that all the venues that you would be transferring your money on and off are blocked from being used. So it has the effect of starving out the exchanges. Now, Unocoin, which is one of the biggest exchanges there, has basically been walking this tightrope trying to survive, and now what they've come up with is they are actually launching like physical ATMs that they own themselves in the major cities. They have one in Bangalore, and now they're going to do Mumbai and somewhere else. So all the major cities, they want to have ATMs there, and you just put your cash in or you get your cash out directly from there. And then once they're on the platform, they have to use stable coins.
A true USD.
Yeah, so, and this is this is a perfect example we've talked about in the past, like why Tether existed in the first place. The reason Tether existed was because it was really hard for exchanges to get banking relationships. So here we have a situation where exchanges in India can't get banking relationships, so they're using the stable coins. Now, these stable coins have the same exact issue. They could have their own banks stopped if they don't do compliance. So the question is, how much can India comply a U.S. company? Right? That's what it would come down to.
Yeah, can they force True USD's hand to sort of comply with their...
Right, because I think True USD is a U.S. company. I'm not sure.
Not positive either. Wouldn't be surprised, though.
But it's definitely a Western country.
Yeah. No, so this is something interesting. India in particular, feel bad for our friends in India who are trying to build companies and use cryptocurrency and evangelize cryptocurrency in general. It seems like the government's making it an overwhelmingly hard process.
Yeah, I mean they're scared. They understand the threat that Bitcoin represents.
Yeah.
And I think, the Indian people are resourceful people. There's a large amount of them, a very large amount. And they're used to telling the government to go fuck themselves. So they're finding ways. As you can see, this guy's a huge target and he's finding ways.
Yeah. No, and Indians in particular have inherently gotten the case for gold throughout time. And there was the one article Elaine you wrote a couple weeks ago where there was like Indian calling farms that were calling Americans, trying to scam them, pretending to be the IRS and trying to scam them out of money to like make payments to like fake accounts. And one of the quotes was an Indian saying in the Bloomberg article, like, I can't believe how afraid like Americans are of their government. Like, all you have to say is like, we're with the IRS and we'll take the money. Like here in India, that never happens. We'll fight back and call bullshit. So it's funny to see that dichotomy of the type of fear of government that we have as Americans as opposed to people in India, where it seems like they may have a more like Orwellian system, but maybe they just don't respect it at all.
Yeah, I like I said, I have faith that I think the Indian people are going to be a major part of this movement, whether their government likes it or not.
Yeah. Bang, bang. But staying on
now we have the stablecoin
tangent. Tether. We talked a lot about it last week. A lot has happened since we talked about it last week. It has since
everything's stabilized.
Yeah, converged back to its dollar peg. What was really interesting is I think there was something like, was it $570 million in outflows or 710 million outflows? 130 inflowed into other stable coins.
Right, so 600 definitely went out to U.S. dollars.
Yeah, Bitcoin or USD. Yeah, right.
I think USD.
USD, or other native currencies could have been.
Right. Either way, it seems like all of Tether's processes are running smoothly. They have a bank now. Bitfinex has a new bank now. Seems like deposits and withdrawals are stabilizing. Bitfinex still has a slight premium. Probably mostly because of risk. We'll see. Maybe they're still having a little bit of deposit issues, stopping the arbitrage. But, at the end of the day, with all of these stable coins, with all of these centralized exchanges, you run the risk that at any moment you could lose your money. And if they're regulated and complying with laws, then you're giving them a ton of KYC information, but at least you can, sue them and try and recoup it afterwards. But if it's a company that's breaking the law, like that's gone. Like you're not going to be able to, try, or maybe you can and you do something like the Mt. Gox bankruptcy, and then it's 4 years later and 20x later, and we're just, you're just getting it now.
Yeah. With this Tether story in particular, in the last week in particular too, it seemed like it was a very big media-driven narrative. Do you think there's anything to be said about like the coverage of Tether? Should we like take time for these things to play themselves out before we jump to conclusions and blah blah blah?
I think the word that a lot of people are using was weaponized FUD.
Yeah, which
we've talked about a lot on this pod before. That FUD is all right, but unsubstantiated FUD is the issue. Mm-hmm. A lot of the issues with Tether come down to the fact that they are definitely breaking KYC AML laws. So there's a whole group of people that will just automatically say Tether's a fraud just on that fact alone, right? Then there's a different subset of us who understand that's why Tether was born to begin with, and we think those laws are unjust and don't actually help consumers. And so then the question to us becomes two things: is do they actually have all the money that they say they have? And then the second thing, which is what Bitfinex always kept saying, was that Tether was running a fractional reserve. So that was the point one. And then he would link it to a point two that was, and they're using that fractional reserve to pump the price of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's price would never have gotten this high if it wasn't for Tether manipulating the price. So both of those remain unfounded. To this day, they've always remained unfounded. We have no reason to believe that they don't have a full reserve. There's no way for us to tell that they do. That's by design. You have a trusted third party. You have to trust the fucking third party. And there's absolutely zero proof that it was used to manipulate the price upwards. Now, as far as we go, I think we were very reserved on the last pod about it. We obviously have disdain for Bitfinex and Tether, and we don't trust them personally. And I think in those times of crisis, it's important to stay reserved, but also to give your true opinion and to explain the risks to people. Because if during that panic you took an 8% cut because you were holding Tether and you sold it when it was at 92 cents and you took an 8% cut, right? Mm-hmm. 8% in this industry is nothing for me. Like you could have lost all of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like seeing people lose everything.
Yeah.
If you're,
I see what you're saying.
You're trusting a sketchy exchange or a stable coin or something like with your money, like literally at any moment you could wake up and you could have nothing.
This is true.
Right?
This has happened.
Yeah. So in a time of panic, like Tether has allowed you to break KYC AML and not be at risk of all of Bitcoin's fluctuations, right? So if you've been holding it since 12,000, Tether has saved you 50% loss, right?
Yeah.
But there comes times when I think that if you do insist on holding Tether, like it's worth paying that 8% to just be like, okay, well, let me just wait out these 6 hours, 8 hours, just make sure everything, kind of settles itself back down.
Yeah.
It's the cost of doing business.
Yeah. No, I think that's sound advice and a good play if you are holding Tether. An 8% loss is much preferred to a 100% loss.
Massive difference. Absolutely massive difference.
So that was the Tether news. Do we want to talk about Wasabi now? You were using Wasabi. You tested it out. You took it for a spin. And it seems like you liked it.
Wasabi is so fucking cool. I felt like a little kid again.
So let's explain it. Wasabi Wallet, it's a project by Nopara, who's a dev who's
There's two others. And it's open source, so they have a bunch of contributors now.
Yeah. So they have a bunch of contributors. Nopara is like the leading...
He's the CTO.
The CTO.
I think the other two CEOs are lawyers because he's so scared of legality. He partnered with two lawyer friends.
But Nopara has notoriously, historically been very adamant about bringing privacy tools to Bitcoin wallet infrastructure in particular, whether that be via CoinJoin or ZeroLink, a protocol he's working on that utilizes CoinJoin. Yeah. And so I guess the first implementation of what he's been building for years is Wasabi, which is a fully functional wallet that really brings a lot of fungibility upgrades at not even at the protocol level, just at the UX wallet level. So let's explain how it works. You used it.
Bang, bang. So it's a light wallet that runs on your computer. Runs on any computer, Windows, Linux, OS X. Don't use Windows. I don't know why I listed it first. Basically, so like Electrum, right? People know Electrum. It's a light wallet. Doesn't have to download the whole blockchain. So you don't have to have 200 gigabytes on your computer. You don't have to wait for it to sync or anything like that. Now it acts as a normal wallet. that defaults through Tor. It has built-in Tor in it as well. So when you boot it up, automatically links in through Tor.
So you're running onion routers.
Yeah, you're running through the onion routing system so that your peers aren't able to figure out your IP. And it like switches the servers it uses. It has like an adaptive thing, which is pretty cool. And then when you do a receiving address, it's SegWit by default. When you do a receiving address, it asks you to label it. So every single transaction you have going into the wallet has like an origin stamp, basically. Like, so it says, like, okay, so I brought this from Cash App. So like one of the main uses of something like this is, let's say you buy your Bitcoin on Cash App, but you don't want Cash App and anyone they comply with to know where your Bitcoin go after that. So when you send a transaction from Cash App knows the address you sent it to. And from that point on, they can track where those Bitcoin go to try and figure out where your Bitcoin goes to, what you spend it on, all these different things. So with this, you would open up Wasabi, you would create a new receiving address, you would send your withdrawal from Cash App, and then you would label it Cash App withdrawal. And then in your wallet, you would see that UTXO set is from Cash App. So it's like particularly a dirty UTXO, like that is linked to you.
Yeah.
Then you go into the CoinJoin menu, and you can do an automated CoinJoin process that mixes up your coins with other people's coins in a way to obscure that blockchain analysis. And it's done in a way where control over your private keys is never in anyone else's hands. You never lose custody of your coins, and your peers don't know who they're interacting with.
It's pretty badass.
And then the result is it shows you how many times it's done that, and the higher number, the better. And it has like these little color badges, like red is the worst, then yellow, then green, and then green check mark. And then when you send out, you can pick which UTXOs you want to send out, and they all have the different levels of privacy and where their origin is from and whatnot.
It's pretty badass. It seems like an incredible wallet UX.
It's extremely
so it's very
easy
good coin
use.
selection.
Coin selection is a fucking breeze to use. It's like very user friendly, I think, for what it offers. Fully open source. They do take a small mixing fee.
So I was going to say, CoinJoin's a little bit more expensive, but worth it in the long run.
Yeah, the idea is that you mix, and then you mix in like the background, and then like you seed a mobile wallet with like a little bit of money, and then you spend it from there. It's just like it doesn't work as well as like an instant mix and spend kind of thing. It's something you do later, and the more people that use it, the better. So like right now, not that many people are using it, so I have to like run it overnight. You can't. But the more people that use it, the faster it gets, and like the more anonymous it gets.
Yeah, so you freaks out there should check out the Wasabi wallet. Where can we find it?
It's wasabiwallet.io.
Wasabiwallet.io.
The other thing that's dope as fuck is that they created this zero-link protocol, which allows this wallet. It's basically an implementation of the protocol, so any wallet that implements it can take part in the same mixing pools, because the key is liquidity, right? We need as many people using it as possible. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be compatible with Samurai's solution on mobile, and it's compatible with Bob Wallet, which I forget who's doing that, but that's another wallet that's going to support ZeroLink. So theoretically, we could have like 10 different wallets all using the same mixing pool, which is badass.
That'd be incredible. And so I think this actually brings up like an incredible point. Like, this might be very bullish for Bitcoin, because we might not need to implement too many fungibility upgrades at the protocol level if we're able to create this UX at the wallet level with Bitcoin's current state. So fungibility might not be as bad as previously thought, which is awesome.
I think fungibility on Bitcoin is horrible right now.
But
I think this
does this show it's getting better?
This is like the bare minimum. This gives us at least a basic privacy guarantee, and as long as we get more people using it, like major plausible deniability bonuses too. And I think it should not be discounted. It's absolutely huge news, but better privacy improvements, better privacy guarantees that are easier to use on Bitcoin, I think are something that should definitely be considered.
Yeah, but let's stay on this vein for a little bit. So one of the knocks of complete privacy at the protocol level is you can sort of lose track of inflation. So if we get complete fungibility with some types of upgrades, whether it be bulletproofs or something else, there's a chance that we wouldn't notice that there's inflation. So is this a good trade-off, having the privacy push to the wallet software, just so we can have the certainty of the 21 million cap at the protocol level?
He's smiling at me while he's asking it. I think I think it's a good balance. I'm not necessarily saying that there should be protocol changes, but there's plenty of room for other privacy improvements. You know, Lightning Network gives us privacy improvements. Yeah. Liquid has confidential transactions, so you can't see the amounts.
No, but this is one of the biggest FUDs against Bitcoin, is that there isn't fungibility at the protocol level, and maybe we're discovering that we don't need as much as people think.
I think we need a lot more than we have right now.
I would agree. But not as much.
It needs a balance. It's a balancing act. I mean, look, if you have like Lightning Network, atomic swaps with Zcash and Monero, then they're basically become mixers with utility tokens, like useless utility tokens. Mm-hmm. So there's like a lot of ways you can do it while preserving the transparency. The opt-in transparency, opt-in privacy is never as good as full privacy. Mm-hmm. But with Bitcoin, it's a balancing act because it gets value from both facets. It gets value from the censorship-resistant aspect and from the full transparency aspect. So to try and find a balance makes a little bit more sense. But if you're talking about just to have the most private technology, like it's almost always needs to be full anonymity, because you want the full anonymity set there. You want as many people obscuring your transactions as possible.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting debate, and it's fun watching it develop as these new tools come out, and as people begin to experiment with different ways to attain fungibility within Bitcoin.
The important thing is that Wasabi and ZeroLink is fucking badass, and you should get the wallet. It's going to give you a seed just like any other wallet. Write that shit down on a piece of paper. It's the safest way to store these things. You can write it down on 2 pieces of paper if you want. And play around with a little bit of money. You know, not that much. Just play around with it. Get used to it. You know, give me some liquidity. And I'll give you some as well. Team effort.
I like that. Teamwork makes the dream work, people. We're all in this together.
Privacy is important.
It is. It's very important. Staying on the wallet software, Neutrino was launched last week, I believe, or officially launched last week. And that is an upgrade of SPV clients. I believe the way you described it to me before we started recording is it's somewhere between an SPV node and a full node. And this will allow certain functionalities on the Lightning Network for people that are using their mobile phones and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's basically like a better light client standard. So like if you don't want the full blockchain, you had to make pretty big privacy short. You had to give up a lot of privacy, and you didn't have full verification. You still don't have full verification here, but it gives you a lot of benefits of a full node without having to run a full node. Mm-hmm. It's not an actual full node, but it's definitely a step up for mobile clients and for anything that's like a lightweight computing device.
Yeah. So that was just launched.
And it's being packaged into a couple Lightning clients, I think.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. I'm admittedly a little bit ignorant. I haven't read through all the Neutrino docs yet. Apparently, it'll enhance privacy, scalability, and decentralization.
Yeah, it's more efficient,
censorship
more
resistance.
Just wins across the board. It's not a full node, but it's wins across the board.
Yeah, and it's Bitcoin infrastructure getting built out slowly but surely. So it's just another another part of the spaceship that Bitcoin is becoming.
Bang, bang.
Bang, bang. Next topic, switching to a project that is a lot of patches to make moving forward. We brought it up last week, and it was officially announced later last week that the Constantinople hard fork for Ethereum is being pushed back. I guess the Ethereum devs hopped on a core dev call and decided, which I would completely agree with, that they are going to...
Breaking news, Marty agrees.
They're going to postpone. I mean, they can't hard fork with the mess up that they had on the testnet. They definitely need to make sure they have all their ducks in a row. So Constantinople officially postponed until 2019. This is just adds to my belief that the transition to proof of stake is going to be fleeting and may never come.
It's going to come, and it's just going to be a disaster.
That's what Matt thinks. Yeah. We'll never. I mean, let me caveat that it'll never come and be completely successful.
Well, I mean, that's a ridiculous caveat.
Why is that ridiculous?
Like, do you think they're going to push through a proof of stake hard fork that will switch the network fully to proof of stake?
No.
Ever. You don't think it'll be running at least for like a couple months, like on a proof of stake system, like something like Tezos, which is already live, that a lot of the ETH heads already love?
I don't think so. I think you'll get...
That was rude. I shouldn't have called them ETH heads.
That was rude, Matt.
But Vitalik shouldn't have called us Bitcoin maximalists.
Hey, we try to stay above the fray, okay? Here at the Rabbit Hole Recap, we're refined. This is a refined show, Matthew.
That's true. As I sip my Macallan, they still haven't sponsored us.
I don't know if it'll ever come.
They have to. Tezos is live. EOS
I know they
is
have
live,
to.
Definity's coming. Cosmos is coming. All their supporters want proof of stake. They're gonna have to. They'll push it through. There'll be 3 Ethereum chains.
Exactly.
You'll have proof of work Ethereum.
So in my
You'll
mind,
have
that's not a
proof of stake
successful
Ethereum.
proof. That's not a successful transition.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
It won't be clean. I'll agree with you that it won't be clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it'll come eventually. Delay. I agree with you that it's just delays compound on delays. And there's so much complexity. Like think about the bug we just had in Bitcoin. Like there's so much complexity with this new system. And who knows what's lying in there.
Right. Yeah. Good luck. That's all I'm going to say.
It's exciting to watch from the sidelines.
It is very exciting. No, I wish you guys well. I think it'll be interesting to see how late into 2019 the hard fork is initiated.
Well, this is a good tangent because I think this is a good connection because I think this just goes further to show that altcoins are a test bed for Bitcoin, and they don't only test technical specifications. It tests social behavior and how groups act in with certain stimuli and certain narratives and whatnot. And so it's interesting to watch, and I think that no matter what happens, Bitcoin will be for the better.
Yeah, no, this is actually stay on this tangent. I think it was Stop and Decrypt mentioned it on Twitter, and there was a big debate towards the end of the week last week about the existence of altcoins, whether or not they're valid, just a distraction, or if Bitcoin would be better off with or without them. And I think I agree that Bitcoin is better off with them, just from the sense that maybe it confuses the governments and the regulators who have no idea what's going on, and it sort of holds fire for Bitcoin in the long term just by confusing everybody else, so they can't focus on Bitcoin to sort of cage and stop from growing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a major benefit of them. It's they're the lowest hanging fruit. They act as kind of like a flak jacket.
Yeah.
And they act as like a canary in the coal mine too. So if the government wanted to take down something like Ethereum or even easier like a Zcash, like a way smaller altcoin based in the United States, founding companies based in the United States, a bunch of investors are based in the United States. Like it'd be really easy for them, and it would be a perfect warning sign to say, okay, is Bitcoin robust enough to handle this? Can we stop this from happening? I think I said this. I tried to make this point when I was being interviewed by you on the pod the first time. Is that I think that altcoins, the only negative of altcoins is to the retail that loses money on them, but to the overall system, I think it makes it stronger. I think forks make Bitcoin stronger, and I think it's just all part of the free market, the free market system.
Yeah,
that we have here.
I would tend to agree.
But that security element from like sovereigns is like that's a completely valid additional reason as well.
What do you mean?
That it's like that we know that if states go after them, then they act as like kind of like a buffer for us.
Oh yeah, true.
The lower hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But then something like Monero is like super privacy focused, and we can say, oh well, Bitcoin is transparent. Monero is for criminals or whatever. So they go after something like that first.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Monero,
I've been trying to tangent into that one for a little bit now.
Well, you just did it perfectly. They just successfully hard fork bulletproofs into their protocol, and it has made some incredible efficiency gains for Monero in particular. I believe the blockchain download time has been cut by like 80% or something like that, and the amount of data per transaction similarly has been cut by like 80 to 90%. I could be bullshitting those percentages, but there's been
it was a lot. It was a big efficiency boost.
Considerable efficiency boost. Monero's an interesting, again, it's probably one of the higher caliber altcoins, quote unquote, as it's probably one of the most top 5 respected projects because it's pretty true to the cypherpunk ethos of privacy and just getting shit done. So it's interesting to see bulletproofs in the wild.
So what's interesting about bulletproofs is it's an efficiency gain on confidential transactions, which is confidential transactions is part of Monero's anonymity suite, like all the different tools they use to create the privacy on the chain. Confidential transactions, they hide the transaction amount. So you still know the sender and the receiver, but you don't know how much is being sent. So bulletproofs make confidential transactions way more efficient. So this is like another perfect example of using altcoins as a test bed because confidential transactions have been proposed for Bitcoin. And part of the reason that they haven't been implemented is because of efficiency loss. The other reason is because of auditability, like you were saying. But the efficiency was a big issue, especially even if you were talking about like side chains or something like that. So this is proof in the wild. Well, we'll see. It just like happened.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone. This is proof in the wild that confidential transactions could be more efficient. But I was talking to someone the other day about how imagine if Monero had some kind of inflation bug or something. Like you would never be able to. To catch that would be crazy. Like I don't think it would be a while before someone if it was being exploited. Like I feel like it'd be a while for someone to catch something like that.
Right.
Just so much code, and it's actually like you were saying, like it's like one of the premium altcoin projects or whatever. Like there's not that many eyes on this code. Like I don't know.
It has like 2% of the Bitcoin Core. Like pull requests or something like that. Or I don't know what to say, pull requests or contributors.
Yeah, I mean, my Monero, which is like the number one non-official client that people use because it's a light client. You don't have to download the whole blockchain. I think is like maintained by like 4 people I saw on GitHub or something. There's only like 4 committers. So like that's, I don't know, it's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
But and they also have this, they hard forked the ASIC, the mining algo again, so to try and stop ASICs. So you have this issue where like only the core devs know what the next algorithm is going to be, which is extremely centralizing, and they do these 6-month hard forks, like regular maintenance hard forks, to get people in the habit of doing hard forks all the time, which adds another security risk. So it goes with what we were saying earlier, that these other chains aren't just case studies, live case studies of the actual technical specs like bulletproofs or confidential transactions, but it's also a case study of how they're running them, right?
Yeah.
And how, what kind of attack issues do you have when you have constant hard forks? And, maybe one day we'll find out, what the actual
threats
implications of that is. Once, if Monero gets compromised because of these routine hard forks, then, then you have proof of it right there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. And we'll see how Monero fares in the future. I'm not sure how I feel about the mandatory hard forks every 6 months. I don't know if I would be a fan of that.
I'm definitely not a fan of it for Bitcoin. I do kind of appreciate that we get a unique case study. So like if all the altcoins are doing the same thing, then their benefit to the system as a whole, greatly diminishes because you don't really find out that much new shit. But like I love that Monero's they're pushing the envelope a little bit and they're giving us more, more to learn from.
Yeah. So shout out to Monero for doing that. Congrats on the successful implementation of Bulletproof, and let's see what it looks like in the wild with a little bit more time. It's only been like 3 or 4 days, so we'll see. We'll see what it looks like in 3 or 4 months. Next story, onto a different type of topic. Five Dime sportsbook owner reported missing in Costa Rica, possibly kidnapped. Apparently, the robbers or the kidnappers are looking to get Bitcoin in return for this man's life. They will release him once they get Bitcoin sent to an address. So this is an example of ransom, physical ransom in the wild. The $5 wrench attack is coming into play here, and it seems like I think Five Dime is one of the sports books that was accepting Bitcoin as payment. And if you're vocal about owning Bitcoin, be careful.
The only reason I put this one in the agenda was because fucking Noriel retweeted my tweet about this.
Did he?
And like took me out of context.
I didn't see it. What did he say?
And he obviously didn't listen to the pod where I told him to go fuck himself last
what did he say?
He said like this is why Bitcoin should be banned because it's like enabling crypto robberies. So my argument was, and I still stand by this argument, is that Bitcoin is, and cryptocurrencies in general, I had a bunch of people in my mentions like, oh, they should use Monero, like whatever. Like if you have Bitcoin, you just open up Bisq and you can get some Monero if you want to send a Monero, if the ransomer wants Monero instead, or you could use Wasabi Wallet or any of the centralized mixers that they've been using. Look at all the guys. Plenty of guys have gone to jail, but plenty of people have gotten away with hacking these things and they haven't gotten caught. So if you know what you're doing, you can still use it anonymously. Bitcoin is the best form of money, period. So obviously it's also the best form of money for ransoms. Before this, you had to like give them like diamonds or cash in a briefcase, and you had to like meet them in person, and you had that whole scene in movies where like everyone had the guns in the trees, and you're like walking up. You're all worried.
I'm trying to think of the name of my favorite one with Keanu Reeves and Jesus. On the bus. What am I thinking of?
Keanu's in it?
Keanu's in it. They're on the bus. I got
it. He's going to look it up. But, yeah, so, like, it changes the game for ransoms, and it changes the game for all money. And that's the reason why. Like, if you look at, remember when, during the Obama... Speed, there you go. Of course, how did I forget Speed?
Speed.
That seems...
Yeah, Dennis Hopper. He's the one who wants to meet with a bomb strapped to him for physical cash.
Right.
Now you can just do it with Bitcoin.
That whole scene could be avoided if they just sent Bitcoin and with the signed message, this is my address, I sent it. And then, I mean, it's up to the kidnappers if they're going to release him or not, but that was the same situation you had with cash. But I was saying, like, I think during the Obama administration, like, we paid, as part of the deal with Iran, we paid them back, like, a bunch of money we took from their bank accounts.
Yeah, we physically flew cash over.
Right, because both governments understood that if we sent anything through the banks, that was all bullshit anyway, right? Both the U.S. and Iran knew that. So they had to literally fucking put a cash in a jet and fly it over.
Pallets of cash.
That could all be solved with a Bitcoin transaction, like 15 cents.
Well, that's not going to happen. They're not forward thinking like that, Matthew.
It's just it's a game changer and just went right over Rubini's head. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. I think we should stop paying attention to Noriel. He's not worth it. I don't think he's that influential either.
I agree. I mean, I think he's convinced more people to buy Bitcoin than to sell their Bitcoin.
I hope so.
Every time, he has. I checked. He has like 500,000 followers on Twitter. Every single time he tweets about this shit, people are like, what is he talking about? And more people are buying it. No one who owns Bitcoin is like, oh shit, Noriel was like, for the 15th time, this is shit. I'm gonna sell all my Bitcoin. No one's doing that. So he's actually doing the exact opposite, and it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, keep it up, Noriel. But I don't want to talk about it anymore because you annoyed the hell out of me.
Okay, continue.
BitMEX dropped a blog post, started some controversy at the beginning of last week or middle of last week. They have announced that they have launched their own implementation of Bitcoin. You can find it on GitHub. This is basically a competitor to Core. But they say it's complementary, and the reason they're doing it is basically to prove that Bitcoin is going to be okay if somehow the Bitcoin Core repository gets compromised or gets shut down for some reason. It's easily forkable code that can be ported over to other repositories and then built on there. So I thought this was cool. I'm actually a fan of it. I just think I think it was more of like a publicity stunt to prove that Bitcoin's going to be okay. And I'm a fan of it.
It was a fucking badass move by BitMEX.
Yeah.
Big fan of BitMEX. BitMEX research in general has been top notch, and they're the ones who did it. Was the research arm.
Yeah.
It was actually kind of funny because I woke up the morning they announced it, and in my mentions there was someone freaking out about it and like mentioned like a bunch of us, and then there was like a couple responses, like everyone was like trying to figure it out on the fly, like what the hell was going on. And I gave like a little quick read through, and I just like immediate smile came to my face. Like, it's such a fucking. But so basically, what they did was they like clicked the fork button on GitHub, or they Control-C, Control-V, just copied and pasted the code over. Code is open source; anyone could do that. And they might make some changes that are different if they want to. I don't know how far they'll go along with it, but basically the idea is Bitcoin by default is a non-change system. There's no automatic updates. So the code you're running on your computer is set in stone consensus. So the only way changes happen are if you actually download an update and install it. And the same can be said about any of these, alternative maintainers. Like anyone else can copy the code, make any changes they want, and if miners and nodes want to run it, then people will install it and they'll run it, and that might become the majority of the network.
Yeah.
But no one's forcing. Like Core doesn't have control. It's to get rid of this fallacy that Core has control over the network in any way.
Yeah. And
they can't
particularly the maintainers of the Core repository.
Yeah, they can't. They could ship new code, but no one can force the people running the nodes to actually install that new code any more than BitMEX can.
Exactly. So this was a cool launch by BitMEX research. I'm a fan of it. Big fan of BitMEX research in general. If you freaks have not checked out their blog, definitely go do so in a hurry. They have some of the best takes in the business and some very thorough and unique analysis, I would say.
Paid for by your liquidations.
That is true. Be careful with leverage. Only trade if you know how. If you know how to. This is not financial advice.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
I think this is the last. Or no, we got two more topics. Staying on the exchange, we got two exchange stories to finish out.
Well, they're connected.
The recap. Well, one's decentralized, the one's centralized. The centralized one, Binance, is announced that they're launching chain analysis functions. I guess they're going to comply
No, it's not like anything that the user sees. They're doing it like behind the scenes.
Yes, exactly. So they're going to comply with some regulatory agencies, which is weird.
We're not sure exactly what they're doing. I mean, some of the Binance accounts, like the bigger accounts, you have to already do KYC.
Mm-hmm.
The lower end accounts you don't. But it looks like they're going to start tracking transactions into the exchange. Through what we were like talking about earlier with Wasabi, basically, you follow the blockchain and you see where the transactions are coming from.
Yeah.
So if you use something like Wasabi, it makes it much harder for that to be effective.
Yeah, so they've partnered with Chainalysis, and Chainalysis will provide access to its Know Your Transaction compliance software, enabling the exchange to monitor cryptocurrency transactions in real time. And this tool will look for potentially criminal or otherwise illicit activity.
Yeah, they're spying and tracking on their users, and a lot of people are using Binance because they don't do that, so it's worth noting. And then to connect that to the other exchange story, which is why I put them smack them together, is Changely and Shapeshift, which historically have not complied with KYC, have started complying with KYC themselves. And because of that, we now have BISC, which is this decentralized exchange that basically no one was using, that just keeps getting higher volumes every month. And this month, they're being led mostly by Monero, because I guess a lot of people are using Shapeshift and Changely for Monero. And now they can't use Binance either if they don't want to be tracked. So BISC should see continued increase.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart here.
That's BISQ.
Yeah, BISC had 5 million in volume last week, but that's huge. It was under a million up until January of this year.
Yeah,
so.
it was up, until Changely and Shapeshift started adding KYC. And, these decentralized exchanges, the main purpose of them is to break KYC.
Mm-hmm.
It's to break KYC AML laws. So they can't just be decentralized in name only. Like, they have to be actually decentralized. Otherwise, a government is going to force you to comply. And the decentralized exchanges that are KYC compliant are never going to be able to compete with the BISCs of the world, the ones that aren't. So this idea that like VCs and hedge funds can get like an ROI from investing in a decentralized exchange just seems like super backwards to me, because those investors themselves are like a vulnerability to get KYC implemented in the first place.
Yeah. No, I think the traditional finance and venture capital world is going to find out in a very abrupt way that the decentralized distributed ethos of Bitcoin and cryptography in general really does not mesh well with their business models and their investment models.
Well, I mean, the problem is the regulations. Like, if they're in a country that doesn't have draconian regulations, like, they can profit from it. But, the truth of the matter is that these DEXs operate in a quasi-legal setting, which is why they're able to offer you privacy when all the centralized exchanges have to comply.
What if the DEXs like went out and like bring on like billions of dollars worth of volume at a certain point in time? Do you think the authorities will just be like, all right, it looks like the public wants this, we can't take it down, it's just fully acceptable? Or do you think there will always be sort of underground, frowned upon operations?
Well, the main issue with the DEXs is that, first of all, there's no like true DEXs. I don't even know how decentralized BISC is, so I'm not going to say anything definitive there. But the problem with the DEXs is where they connect to fiat. To get U.S. dollars in, it's almost impossible to do that in an actually decentralized, censorship-resistant way. You have to like connect into banks or something, or then cash is being handed around, which becomes an issue. So like DEXs won't be like truly successful until there's a lot more money in Bitcoin and the ecosystem to begin with. Like once you have the money in Bitcoin, then you can move it around DEXs like super easy. Mm-hmm. Right? But the actual fiat on-ramps and off-ramps, that becomes an issue. As far as governments capitulating, they're all going to capitulate eventually. The problem is how slow they are to embrace it is going to determine where, the next Silicon Valley of tomorrow is, or where the next, New York of tomorrow is. Mm-hmm. And And those countries are going to be the ones that they're going to have lower taxes, but the tax revenue they do get is going to be substantially higher. They're going to be in a substantially better situation. Maybe the reserves will have some Bitcoin in it, and they'll be able to be the next crop of great nations.
Yeah. That was the last topic. We'll see if again, it's like anything, slowly but surely. It's going to take time for these DEXs to build out the liquidity base necessary for them to be completely useful and viable for the masses. And like Wasabi Wallet, which we were describing earlier, it just takes time and adoption. And as has been the theme on the Rabbit Hole Recap and Tales from the Crypt in general over the last couple months, like patience is key. These things are happening slowly but surely. The infrastructure is getting built out. I've never been more bullish from a fundamental perspective. We'll see if the market agrees over time. But yeah, I think the strides that Bitcoin is making to become more decentralized, from the transaction relay layer, the mining pool layer, and now the exchange layer is very positive. Anything else you want to touch on, Matthew?
Bitcoin has never been stronger than it is today. It's never been as decentralized or any of the other measurement points you could to go with. Shout out to Betty.
Shout out Betty.
Props to Betty.
We need more Bettys.
We're all Betty today. I wanted to mention that Murad posted his recent charts.
Mm-hmm.
And he had, Murad's our resident bear here at Rabbit Hole Recap. And I was thinking that maybe we should find like a new resident bear, because he posted his worst case scenario, which had I think the bottom was like 3,000 in 2021 and it was like a little bit painful. But then in 2023, he has us at like $160,000, which is, if that's what bearish means, then maybe I am a bear, but I'd be very happy with $160,000 per Bitcoin in 2023.
As would I.
So maybe we need to find someone who, like back in my day, the bears had price targets of 0.
Yeah, the true bears. Where are you? I can't find them anymore, other than like no coiners.
That's true.
Yeah, so that's all we got for this week, freaks.
I have one more thing, actually.
One more thing, actually.
Someone asked us to talk about open source on the pod.
Okay.
And I think I made it clear on Twitter, but the key is that we should, as a community, never stand for non-open source, at least non-open source wallets. Anything that handles our keys needs to be always open source, and if it's not open source, it's dead on arrival.
Yeah, and
just end of story.
Especially in an environment where open source options already exist. So I think I remember that thread. It was about patents originally and delved into open source. Yeah, no patented wallet software is gonna succeed against a market that is saturated with open source options.
Yeah, fuck patents and fuck closed source.
Yeah, and that's the ending note on this week's Rabbit Hole Recap. Thank you, freaks, for listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, rate, review, share. Let us know what you're thinking. If you have any questions you want us to answer in the future, tweet us. We'll respond. We'll definitely see them. Appreciate you guys listening. Peace and love.
Cheers.